Greetings, people of Earth. Hope this video finds you doing well. Had a request from one of my very good friends who wanted me to do a video on the life of the Buddha. I wanted information about the Buddha. So let me frame this up by saying that I am not a Buddhist. I wouldn't put really any labels on myself, but I'm not religious. I do have great respect for the Buddha and a lot of his teachings. It's very practical, most of what he said. I'm just not a believer in the religious side, I will say, of Buddhism. So real quick, I thought I would talk on Buddhism, a few things about Buddhism briefly here. Hold on, let me find where I'm at. Okay, so there are, again, this is India here. Okay, this is what is Nepal now, this area. But this is where the Buddha did most of his teachings, and I'll show you a few locations here in a minute, but I just want to speak briefly about the different kinds of Buddhism, okay? Because just like Christianity, you may be a Catholic or a Protestant or a Lutheran. Buddhism has kind of developed into two major categories, as you can see here. Now, the original teachings, the closest, in the way I've read about it, to the actual Buddha teachings here in India, you're talking about Theravada Buddhism, okay? And it's a strict spiritual discipline, okay? And this is still the type of Buddhism used in this area. So, and in India, even though I think it's less than 1% of people in India are Buddhists, so it's not very big in India like it is in other parts of Asia. So if you come down here, Theravada Buddhism, you can see in Burma, Thailand, that's Laos there, Cambodia, and then you got the Mahayana Buddhism, okay? This is what's in China, Japan, down here is Vietnam, and that's called Mahayana, and that is more of a religious worshiping, where there's gods and what we would call a god. There's different Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, they're called. Okay, so I just want to run through a few different things. This gentleman right here, who in America is usually referred to as Happy Buddha, is not the Buddha of India, okay? This fella is a Buddha in a sense, because we're all Buddhas in a sense. Buddha just means enlightened, okay? He's enlightened. This is the Happy Buddha. He was a Buddhist monk that lived in China. He's depicted as being so heavy and jolly, as part just to show that he is happy, okay? He wasn't necessarily this big. He wasn't necessarily a real person. You gotta understand, in Asia, their bodhisattvas and their Buddhas, they're not necessarily focused on so much as were they a real person, like a Christian might argue with you extensively that Jesus was a real human being that lived. Not so important in Eastern culture, Eastern religions. This is also not the Buddha. This is another Bodhisattva as an example. This is known as the Medicine Buddha in Tibetan Buddhism, but not the original Buddha. And this fella here, this is a very popular Buddha in Japan and China. He's known as Amitabha Buddha. Amitabha Buddha was a Buddhist monk who promised that when he passed away, he would make a heavenly-like realm. Again, this is very religious stuff. The Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism of China and Japan, in that area, very more religious, okay? A lot of worship and different gods, and you got to understand that they're not strictly Buddhist. They may also practice Confucianism. They may follow Confucius, okay, or ancestor worship and other things like that, okay? So a couple of things to be aware of when you're talking about Buddha. It can mean a lot of different things to different people, okay? Now, there is kind of a third set of Buddhism also. This is Tibet here. I don't know how well you're going to be able to read the map, but here's Tibet. That used to be the home of the Tibetan Buddhists. China did take over, and now they are actually in India. So kind of running their government still in India, but this was their homeland of Tibet. You may have heard of the Tibetan Buddhists. You may recognize this gentleman. This is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He is the leader of Tibetan Buddhism. Okay, so just that little sect that came out of Tibet. Okay, this is their leader. Okay, now he is interesting. His story is interesting, and if anybody wants me to dive into the Dalai Lama and how he is the reincarnated Bodhisattva, it's pretty interesting how they find and look for their Dalai Lama leader. After the Lama passes away, they send out kind of secret agents to go and find the new Lama when he's reincarnated. It's an interesting story. So yeah, we'll get to this in a second. This is the emaciated Buddha. When the Buddha first, well, I'll swing back around to this one, okay? I'll swing back around to that one. Let's move into this. So here is a mala. This is a Buddhist meditation set of beads. I just wanted to show the mala so I could talk a little bit about what the Buddha said about his teachings. He said that his teachings were like a golden mala. So you can picture this, some people call them prayer beads. They're actually meditation beads. But picture them as golden, the beads made of gold, okay? Now, if you had this golden mala, you could easily, give this to, say, a Christian or an atheist. They would accept the golden mala, likely, because it's beautiful and it's made of gold, okay? It doesn't make them a Buddhist. Doesn't mean they meditate. Doesn't mean they, chant or perform any Buddhist practice, okay? But they're happy to have the golden mala. So in other words, you could take the teachings of the Buddha and apply them to your life without having to be a Buddhist or, commit to anything religious. So that's where I'm at with Buddhism. I will accept the golden mala, and I will reject anything religious. All right, let's get back to the story here of the Buddha. Now, the Buddha was born, and there's a little bit of play according to some. I mean, it's not an exact date, I guess I would say, but it is in the area of 566 BC, okay? And that was a small kingdom where he was born. And his father was said to be a king. His Sarukhandana, and his mother was Queen Maya. Okay, so they were royalty. Now, not maybe like your idea of royalty, like, the Queen of England. It was more local clans, okay? So, but they were king and queen, all right? They had ruled over an area. It wasn't huge. They weren't major players in history, but they were royalty, okay? Now, 7 days after the Buddha was born, Queen Maya died, okay, and her sister ended up actually raising him, okay. Now, they went to a mystic that foretold that the prince would be a great king or a Buddha, okay. Now, a Buddha is an enlightened person, okay. So essentially, we're all little Buddhas, and if you were to follow kind of the religious side of Buddhism, essentially anybody could be enlightened and be a Buddha, okay? So he was either going to be according to this mystic, a very good leader, a very powerful and good leader, or a very powerful spiritual leader. So you have to understand that when his father, the king, heard this, he wasn't very impressed. He did not want him to be a spiritual leader, okay? He wanted him to be king. So essentially, he kept him not really locked up, but he stayed mainly at the palace, okay? He was trained in warfare, science of the times. He was allegedly strong, and he was in good health, but he never really left the palace, okay? He stayed kind of a secluded life, okay, as a prince. If you've ever seen like the movie Aladdin, Disney's Aladdin, right, where the Princess Jasmine is yearning to get out of the palace, right? She has everything. Well, it was like that, okay? He had never seen anything real negative, just lived a life of luxury in the palace, okay? Now, and at around age 29, he took some trips beyond the palace gates, and he saw for the first time, what reality was like for the people of India, okay? He saw old, beggars in the street and people suffering unimaginably. If you had never seen a person of age and you were a wealthy, prince, it was overwhelming, I guess I would say, is what I'm trying to say to him. He'd never seen anything like this. So at 29 years old, he left the palace, okay? Now understand, he was married at this time and had a son, okay? And he left them both to search out, to find the end, essentially, of this suffering. He wanted to understand the suffering and help people help him find a way, find a way to end suffering, okay? So for 6 years, he wandered around the forest, looking for teachers. Now understand, back in these days, and still to this day, I believe, a lot of spiritual leaders or gurus or people like that in India are beggars, essentially. Not in the Western sense of the word beggar. These aren't people who have run into hard times or are homeless begging for things. Spiritual leaders and even Buddhist monks now currently, just like Catholic priests and nuns also do it, they don't own anything, okay? A Buddhist monk or a spiritual leaders like he is going to see at this time at 29 as he's wandering around, they didn't own anything. They focused their life on their spiritual practices, okay? So they weren't beggars in the sense of, panhandling for money to buy some beer, okay? They vowed to never own anything. They vowed to never, like a Buddhist monk now, will never touch money. Because it takes away, right, from their spiritual journey, okay? Okay, so this is where we're getting into this Buddha right here. Okay, now this is the kind of an emaciated Buddha here. As he's wandering through the woods, okay, he was looking, this was a practice back then, essentially, was to deny your body pleasure, okay, to focus on, your spirituality, okay, to obtaining enlightenment, okay, to, much like the Christians, I've seen like the old school Catholic Church in the ancient days where they would whip themselves or fast for long periods, okay, to induce kind of a suffering, right? So this is allegedly kind of the state he got to, wandering in these 6 years, looking for a teacher, not finding any answers, okay? And So this is kind of the contrast to what he grew up with, right? So now he went from having everything to eating a grain of rice a day and suffering in the wilderness, okay? And this is when he kind of decided that there must be kind of a middle path, right? So that's a big part of Buddhism, is the Buddhist, the middle way. In other words, not to have excess and not to go without. In other words, if you're going to eat, you don't have to eat mad amount of food. You don't have to starve yourself, eat a healthy, moderate amount of food, okay? And that he started to apply that to just about everything, that there's always kind of a middle ground, right? If this person's telling you their side of the story and blaming this person, and this person's blaming that person, there's likely a middle ground there. It's probably both of their fault, is another example, okay? So moving along, when he reached around 35 years old, he sat underneath a Bodhi tree, okay? And this is the actual Bodhi tree that the Buddha sat under. You can go and visit it today. It is still alive. So he sat under the Bodhi tree to reach enlightenment. Now, he understood at this time that there is a cycle of birth and death, okay? And the idea of enlightenment in Buddhism is to get out of this cycle of rebirth, okay? Now, this is not reincarnation. That's a different thing entirely, okay? In Buddhist beliefs, you die, okay? You do die. The Buddha is dead, and they believe that your karma and kind of carries on, and it's a little different than the karma we think of in America, like, oh, he got his karma, it's payback. It's not really quite that simple, but that carries on into your next life. But the rub in Buddhism is that you do die, okay? The Buddha is dead. Now if we go back to this here of the spreading religions, that's the Buddhism down here, okay? Theravada Buddhism, the Buddhism that I respect the most, the Buddha was not a god. They're not even really concerned with God, okay? Because they're focused on essentially gaining enlightenment, okay? They believe, and this is where the Buddha understood this to be true at 35, that you're going to continue to have to be reborn and reborn and reborn until you reach enlightenment, okay? When you reach enlightenment, then you will leave what they call samsara, which is the recycling, okay? The cycle of born, die, move on, born, and you're going to keep dying and stay stuck in this world of suffering until you reach enlightenment, okay? So he sat there under the tree, the Bodhi tree, swore he would not get up until he was enlightened. And there you have it. He did reach enlightenment under the tree, okay? And then he was the Buddha, right? And then he spent the next 45 years. We'll go back to this here. No, not you either. He spent the next 45 years right here. Actually, when he reached enlightenment, when he really became enlightened, okay, and became so knowledgeable, when he reached enlightenment, really he wanted to just kind of walk away from it all. He really didn't want to be a teacher or start a religion, okay? But he did. He got some followers. I don't want to call them disciples, but essentially disciples, okay? He was the first religious leader in India to accept women and untouchables, which were the lowest caste. So the rich, the poor, men, women, kings, slaves, young and old, they were all equal to him. And that was a very mind-blowing idea at the time, okay? After his enlightenment and after all the teaching, he did go home for a while to see his son and his family. His aunt that had raised him after his mother died actually became the first Buddhist nun. And he ordained a lot of women, and there still are Buddhist monks and Buddhist nuns now. Okay. So we'll get along down here to, let's see. This is the Buddha, kind of at his, this is like a representation of his passing. Okay, so he was, you can see him a lot actually in this pose, laying on his right side. He passed away with some of his followers there. So here's another Buddha statue. If you see this statue, that's certainly the Buddha, the Shakyamuni Buddha. You can see he's touching the ground. That's under the Buddha tree when he reached down, and when he touched the ground, he became enlightened. All right, so that's kind of it. That's the basic life of the Buddha. His teachings, are definitely worth study. He definitely has a lot of wisdom in his teachings. Again, I exclude anything religious, okay? But his teachings are practical, even like the Golden Mala. If you're given that Golden Mala of his wisdom, I would suggest taking it. Buddhism deals with a lot of ending suffering and sadness and attachment and accepting death as coming and, living in the moment and doing our best right now with what we have in this moment. And that it really is. I will say Buddhism has wonderful teachings, okay, outside of the religious. If that type of Buddhism interests you, you're looking down here, Theravada Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism is also beautiful. Now, please understand that these different sets of Buddhism, they do not argue about, like, the fundamentals of Buddhism are the same throughout all of this, okay? All of Eastern Buddhism has some core principles that are united throughout the whole thing, okay? Just kind of like Jesus is a man and God, the Son of God. That is a Christian, no matter if you're Catholic or any other flavor of Christianity, they all generally believe that, Christ was the Son of God, okay? Just like in Buddhism, they have a lot of core teachings that they all follow, okay? Even though the Buddha was pretty clear about we don't need to worship or pray. There's no one to worship. There is no creator God. That the creation of everything is essentially best left to people who study that thing. That even if there was a God, it's not that important. Okay. And now as it's moved into this part of Asia, it's become more of a worship. And they've added their own local deities, which is who this is, and this Happy Buddha, local deities of China. Okay, so they added kind of their own to it, and if anyone wants to get into like the history of Buddhism or the philosophies of Buddhism, hit me with a comment or something. I'll get into this type of thing if that's of interest to anyone that's listening. Okay, I'll get into a more detailed of what the Buddha did actually teach, and we can discuss the different forms of Buddhism if that's of interest to you. I don't know, just let me know. So there it is. That's essentially the life of the Buddha. So again, I hope this video did find you doing well today. Definitely read up on some of the Buddha's famous quotes or teachings. If you're struggling with, attachment to things or living in the past or fearing the future, things like that. The Buddha teachings are wonderful. Now, are we reborn into different lives and blah blah blah? Not in my opinion. Not in my opinion. But again, the fuck do I know anyways, right? All right, you guys, take care and stay safe.